Hello, folks. Welcome back. So last time we were almost at the end of this symbolism section that we are going through. And I'm just going to cover a few points there, and then we'll get back to where we had started on the Bhagwad Gita. Now, we had gone through all the different characters, and I know there's a lot to remember, but the main ones, as we discussed the Bhagwad Gita and we identify them, it will keep getting more and more clear. Now, the last slide that we had in this, we were talking about how consciousness, the witness consciousness, Sakshi Chaitanya, and how the information or how we interact with the world and how knowledge is eventually it goes through our system and where exactly cognition takes place. And I had told you at that time that this was, well, we know, we have said a lot of times before that Bhagavad Gita sits on top of all many important key Upanishads. So this is one of the Upanishads that we had said is Kena Upanishad. And I have deliberately pulled up the relevant section. This is in fact the first section of the Kena Upanishad. It's a short one. And the first chapter especially is worth having by heart if you can memorize some of these slokas. They are interesting for anyone to kind of introspect and contemplate and think about it. It gives a different perspective of how we see things. We went over this, but real quick. Kene shitam patati preshitam manah, kena prana prathama praiti yukta, kene shitam vachamimam vadanti, chakshushrotram kaudevo yunakti. So this is what we said last time. Manaha, prana, vacha. So in the first slok, the question is being asked, what is it that it's driving? And then the second shloka here, Shrotras. I think in the Upanishads they are called as the mantras. Nevertheless, Shrotra is his hearing. Shrotra mana is mind. Vacha is speech. Prana is the respiratory. Well, it's roughly how things, what it is that keeps us alive. It's different from the subtle consciousness, the witness consciousness that we're very different from that. But all the different forces that were asked in the first mantra, they're being mentioned, re-mentioned again here. He's saying that which is the hearer of the ears, or that which is the eyes of the eye of the eyes. That's what Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manoyat Vacho Havacham So Pranasya Prana Chakshuscha Chakshuratimucha Dhiraha Pretyasma Loka Damruta Bhavanti. That's how this Kena Upanishad, it's a wonderful text, and of course it's not a subject of study for us today, but I just thought you would find it interesting that this is one of the first Upanishads that we can see that's related to well, there are many others, but this one that in our study that we have come across. So now that we have done with this part, and we are going to keep a lot of all these in mind, we are going to jump back into the Bhagwad Gita. Now, we were at verse 14. For those who remember, we are at verse 14. But what I want to quickly, we have already gone through the 14 verses, but at that time we did not have this background in mind, and so I want to quickly go through the 14 verses again. Well, I don't know if I'll be reciting all of them. But I want to draw the parallel that we discussed and how it's reflected in this, even the very first chapter of the Bhagwad Gita. So we know all these characters, what they represent, and how does that show up is what we are trying to see, and what is being told in the first chapter. So let's, with all this background, let's try and trace a very common thing that we come across in life. All of us, somehow at one time or the other, we end up in situations where things do not go in our favor. There could be two people arguing about something. There could be a spouse having a difference of opinion. And there are layers of frustration that you are trying to argue, convince something to someone, and that person refuses to agree with you or believe you or take your word, and you think you know what is happening, and you are very confident that what you're saying is right, but the other person refuses to believe. And so the temperatures are going up, escalating. It is getting into a heated argument. So what is happening here? So if we are a part of this whole thing that is going on, it's difficult for us to observe. We always have to be a neutral third party to observe what's going on. So we will stand out and look at this very basic, simple thing that all of us have gone through in life. So what is happening here is that, and there's no one way to look at it. You may be able to trace some other characters in this kind of situation that we are walking through. We have already seen that the characters that are there in the Mahabharata, they depending on how you want to look at it, in fair amount of detail, sometimes excruciating detail, they are going through the anatomy of the subtle part of our existence of a human being. So when this debate that so you are arguing, there are far worse thing. I'm taking a very simple thing. If you are addicted to something, and addiction comes in so many forms, you don't need to be a drug addict on heroin to say that you're addicted. Everybody of us is addicted to something. Others, there are small things are there. Nevertheless, so this argument, this is a very simple case. What is happening here? So here the mind, the intellect, which is we know is Arjun. He is trying to all this is happening in the mind. Now we are not talking about this other person, right? The context has been set that an argument is taking place, the other person refuses, and so you are frustrated, you are kind of annoyed, angry. And so now in that situation, obviously a person cannot analyze himself in that situation. That's one other thing in the second chapter of the Gita. It's wonderfully explained what happens when a person gets angry. But us standing outside, if we take the mind of the person and we try to analyze it, okay, what are the forces that are there in the mind at this time when this person is angry, frustrated because of things not going in his favor? So first we will see, you can pick anyone, I'm just saying the first one is Arjun with his intellect. So there's some reasoning taking place, and we are like, because you said that and because it is that, and there's some kind of very rational logical thing that is going on. It's falling on deaf ears, which is why all this is taking place. So that's Arjun. Now you might have a reason why you are saying the things you are saying. So you are standing on a pedestal. Now it could be because you have gained some knowledge because of which you think there's some kind of superiority. So there are two forces acting from all these forces that we are seeing. This screen is on my right hand side. That's why I'm pointing on in this side of the screen. So the forces in that are there is the knowledge that we have gained, this worldly knowledge that we have gained, that puts us at a point where we think that we know more than somebody else, which sometimes might be the truth. But that's besides the point. The point is, why is there this anger that's happening in the mind? So that's where the influence of Drona and Ashwatthama is there in the mind. So you take your mind and you draw kind of a pie chart, who is occupying the pie chart more. Is it Arjun, and that's our intellect, the rational part of it? Is it that which is dominated by Dronacharya? So you draw this pie chart of the mind. What are the different forces that you might find that there are 100 different pieces, where we are not going to go into 100. We'll just take a look at the major 4 or 5 chunks, and then the other thing that you say is Duryodhan. Duryodhan takes a big chunk of this pie, and so now Duryodhan is there, and Duryodhan is dominating this space, and he is provoking the whole system, and he's like, there is no way we can listen to this person. This is still happening in our mind, that the person may not care what you think. If he is one of your family, you're having a row with your spouse or your kids, maybe they care about you, that he'll feel bad, and therefore they might listen to you. But if it's an outsider, he is not going to listen to you. So we are not talking about this guy. We are talking about what's happening in the mind. So in the mind, who is there? The reason why the brain is in this hot state just now, or the mind is, there is Krishna, like I said. That is not. I'm sorry, not Krishna. It's Arjun. Arjuna is there, and then Drona is there, and then Duryodhana is there. Now Duryodhana is this subtle aspect. So the the interaction between Duryodhan and Arjun, whatever the resultant of that is, that kind of propagates down this whole system, and then eventually it spills out through the outside body. That interaction space is through Karna over here. Karna is representing this external interfaces that we have, and we have got this idea of or we don't think ourselves as being mortal, although that is the case, everybody knows about it, but that's not how persons think about oneself. This is a long story. We will, if time permits, we'll get into it. So what I'm saying here is that there are subtle forces that are acting in the mind, and then they go and eventually manifest themselves. Now, how is it manifesting in this case? It is manifesting the form of speech. Now, if Duryodhan was to really take over more control of the mind, his projection into the external world is in the form of Dushasan. So you might get mad and you will pick something and hurl it. So your motor system now comes into the play. So eventually the mind is driving all these things. When you take a step or to do something physically, you take a step. It started somewhere in the mind that you desire to do something. So the point I am trying to explain here is that this situation of you getting angry and frustrated because this person not listening, this is a battlefield. This is Kurukshetra. And who is there in Kurukshetra? There are all these guys all this that we have discussed. There are all these guys. And who is taking part in it, or who is influencing this battle more than somebody else? Well, it depends on what kind of a person you are, what kind of a life you have led. And that's the whole of the Bhagwad Gita that we are going to get into. So the point is that you are you're asked to fight with some army, with some enemy, right? So there is two cases here. It's we see in these movies and sometimes that there is some kind of a a terror attack or something like that, and they say that somebody is coming into your country with some malicious intent and he is going to do such and such a thing. So you take care of this situation. So now you have a problem. This person who is going to come into your country, it's not written on his forehead that I am this bad guy, right? You don't know who it is. It could be anybody. They all look same. So the first task at hand is to identify or to figure out who this person is, and you get some indirect information about it. So and so person said that this guy was seen here in this restaurant, and then maybe you go to that restaurant and then you find that there is a CCTV there or whatever. So then you know this person, then you get more information about him, and then you put a plan together and you say, this is how I'm tackling him. Similarly, in this fight that we are in, this battlefield, that's the whole reason why this is one question that gets asked often by people. Why is the Bhagwad Gita told in the battlefield? Because believe it or not, that's where we are. We are in this battlefield. So the first task at hand is to find out who the enemy is. If you don't know that, how are you going to fight? And that's what in this first chapter is being explained in a fair amount of detail. It can go even more than what is there. Even this is a lot. We are not going to go into that. Many people believe this is a lot of explanation. But now in this new light, when we see these verses real quick, now you see that the forces are being identified. I can see Duryodhan. I can see Dronacharya, I can say Bhishmacharya. So these are the people I'm going to fight with, the forces I'm fighting with. And then I've got forces that I can use. There is Bhima with me. There are my brothers that are with me, and of course Sri Krishna is there with me. So nothing is happening. We are just identifying where things are. Everything is static. Nothing is moving. Things are there in this place. We are just analyzing the situation. Then we'll see. Oh, do we even have the strength to fight with him? Maybe we will even lose the battle. Who knows? At least understand what is going there. That's where we are. So in this first chapter, just identification of forces that play a big role in our mind. They either take us towards some kind of serene situation, or they just play havoc. It just depends on the situation and then the type of person you are. So in this the first chapter, just two things to recognize, and that's a very big deal. It's all of our life is spent in just these two things in the first chapter. First thing is to recognize that there is a war going on, that there is battle. And then who are we fighting with? Who are the forces? That's the second thing. So you might choose to play dumb and say, no, there's no war going on. Nothing is going to happen with me. Somebody is going to come and chop your head off. They are not going to take you as somebody naive and let's let him go. That's not going to happen. And that is your fate. If you don't realize that, in the second chapter, which is an important chapter in the entire Bhagavad Gita, we will see that Krishna actually tells Arjuna that you are very lucky that you get this chance to fight. That's because if you don't recognize you are in a war, you are on a battlefield, it won't even occur to you that you have to fight. This very basic thing that is there. Okay, enough said. So we know all these different players, and I will quickly go through this. This is the Sanskrit part of the Bhagavad Gita. When I say Sanskrit, there's no English translation because we went through all this last time. But with this new symbolism, taking this into account, now you might appreciate a few of these things that are that are being said a little bit more. So what is the first verse? Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharyam. Well, even before that, I meant over here. This is what Dhritarashtra is asking. Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyotsavaha Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. So here, what is being said is, what is happening in this battle? Who is fighting with whom? Who is on whose side? Are all the players there on the battlefield? Which is exactly what we are talking about. That is the question being asked. And then we know that in the person of Duryodhan, everything is being explained. That Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharya. I will not go through this because we have gone through this. So Atra Shura Maheshwasa Bhima Arjuna Samayudhi. There are different kinds of other warriors who are like Bhima and Arjun who are partaking in this battlefield. So basically the good guys, if you will, they are there. And then Yudha Manuscha Vikran. There are a lot of names that are there, and if we want, or if somebody wants, they can go and understand what the symbolism means. But we should draw a line. Once we know now what is being said over here, we just look at the main characters and how that affects us. Because at the end of the day, we want to use this Bhagwad Gita to improve our quality of life. That's the whole point of Bhagwad Gita or any other religion. If you are not able to do that, then it defeats the whole purpose. It's the aim is not to see which character fits which role and which trait of the mind is mapped to which character. That's besides the point. You could go wrong there. Who cares? As long as you are able to benefit out of these teachings and make your life less perturbed, that's the whole point over here. Asmakam tu vishishtaye tan nibodad vijottama nayaka mama sainyasva. So basically Duryodhan has said, all these guys from the Pandava army that are there, and now these are the guys on my side. So we went through this. There's Bhishma, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and many others. Annecha Bhavachuraha, Nana Shastra Para. So this Nana Shastra Praharanaha. So this is one other thing, that these forces, they come with weapons. So if you analyze this in the right way, you will see that some of these things, they are more powerful than others because of the type of person you are. You have more inclination towards something, and that might help or hurt you depending on what it is that you use for. So that's why there are these plain forces and those forces that come embellished. So they are not just a red color. Some of them are dark red, some of them are light red, some of them are pinkish, so on and so forth. And then we saw this Tasya Sanjanayan Harsham Kuru Vriddha Pitamaha Simhanadam Vinodyachehi Shankam Tadmo Pratapavan. Okay, so the battlefield that is there, that Duryodhana is explaining. So at this point, at verse number 12, what happens is that Dronacharya, as a Bhishmacharya, he blows his conch shell, and then others also blow, and there is chaos and commotion at that point. And this thrills Duryodhana. Tatha shankascha bhairascha panavanaka gomukhaha sahasa evabhyanyanta sashabtastu mulo bhavata. Okay, so this is where we were. This Bhishmacharya has blown his conch shell. There is a lot of tumult in there, and that pleases Duryodhana a lot. Now, if you take this and you try and understand what's happening in the mind at that point, we do not desire that Duryodhana should rule our mind. We want peace there. We don't want tumult. We don't want chaos. We don't want despair, hurt. We don't want all that in our mind. So at this point, there is chaos reigning, because if you see the Bhishmacharya, who is representing the sustaining power of this, and this is a big topic, but basically it is like you you're going to a magic show, and then the magician, he takes a hat and he pulls a rabbit out of the hat, and then he says, come confusion, come delusion. So if you were to understand how this magician is performing this magic, then you will lose all interest in that show, and the magician also will have no interest in doing the magic, and you already know it. There'll be no fun, everything will be gone. So this is, you are in this debate, you are in this heated argument with this other person, and you come to a point where your power to reason is just shot down. Not entirely, but at least the main parts of it. And other forces over here, it's just so much of clamoring going on, this other thoughts come, and the basic thread is lost. That's what is being represented at this point. So all this first chapter is describing a point where you think that you can manage the situation well, and things keep on escalating, and then it reaches a point where you are absolutely helpless and you are lost. There is an excellent description of this in the second chapter, and when we get to that, we'll see. So that's what is happening here in this 12 and 13. And now this 14th verse is why we broke from this first chapter, and we started going down this detour, this other route, where we wanted to get into symbolism. And I kept saying that I was in two minds if I should have done this symbolism thing before, but then I didn't want to stretch it too long, because one might think, when is the Gita going to start? So I deliberately took a break at this point, so we got an idea of the Gita explaining the different forces that are there, and what we took the detour to understand what they meant. And so at this point, the situation is thus: there is the forces, the Kaurava forces are there, the Pandava forces are there, and Arjuna and Krishna are there in this in the battlefield in the middle, and Bhishma has blown his conch, and there's a lot of chaos and tumult going on. That is the situation. And then now what happens at this point? Tata Shweta. Okay, let me switch back to this English translation one so that you can follow what is being said here. Okay. Tata Shwetair Hayair Yukte Mahati Syandane Sthitau Madhava Pandavaschaiva Divyau Shankau Pradat Madhu. This verse is of a lot of importance. Then we are going to spend a little bit of time on this, and you'll know why. So Tata Shweta is white. Higher Shweta Tata Shweta higher Yukta. Basically, if I want to paraphrase this whole slok over here, it is saying that then Arjun on this chariot, where Sri Krishna is the charioteer, and he has got white horses that are pulling this chariot, and then Sri Krishna, because now that Bhishma has blown his conch and they are making all this noise on the battlefield, the Pandava army is reciprocating. So there is this chariot pulled by these white horses that Krishna is charioteering, and Arjuna is there, and now Krishna blows his conch. That is what it is saying here. So it is saying Tata, then Shweta, white, Hayayar Yukte, which is basically the white horses, Mahate, Mahate is great, big, have whatever, big chariot. Tata Shvetair Hayar Yukte Mahatis Chandane Sthito Madhava is Sri Krishna. Pandavas. So Sri Krishna and Pandava here could mean any of the Pandavas, but we know that it is Arjuna. Divya Shankha. Shankha is the conch shell. Pradat Madhu. So they blow their conch shell. And what kind of a conch shell is there? So he's saying Divya, it is divine. Sri Krishna's conch shell is divine. So he blows his conch shell, and then you will see after this that other Pandavas also they blow their conch shells, and these conch shells they have names to them, like Panchajanya, and we'll see the Devadatta. But this particular verse is an important one to know. Tata Shvetair Hayer Yukte Mahatis Chandane Sthito Madhava Pandavaschaiva Divya Shankha Pradat Madhu. Actually, not even the second line, the first line. Tata Shvetair Hayer Yukte. So this one, this one is based of the some section in the Kathoupnishad. So I have pulled that up here. It's in the third canto of the Kathoupnishad. There are 5 chapters in the Kathoupnishad, and they are. It's not as small as Kena. It's not as big as the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It's a very interesting Upanishad. And this it's a story of a boy who goes to the king of death, and he asks him, what happens to man after death? He asks him that question in the first chapter, and then the story goes on. So then at one point in the story, this is actually in the third chapter, this particular mantra comes in. So I don't have a English translation for this. I should have tried and brought it. I'll see next time if I can get it. But most of you might be able to follow. So what does it say? Atmanam rathiram vidhi shariram rathamaevatu buddhim tu sarathim vidhi manapragrahamevacha. That's what this Sanskrit sloka, Sanskrit mantra here is. Atmanam rathinam vidhi. Vidhi is to know. Ratha is chariot, right? So we have said that Sri Krishna is pulling a chariot. So Atmanam, Atma, this is the soul or the jiva of the man. So this is a very big topic, and we are just going to take just the relevant section so that we can proceed with our Bhagwad Gita meanings of things. Atmanam rathinam vidhi. The chariot is the Atma. Shariram rathamevatu. The body, sorry, Atmanam rathinam with the rathinam is the charioteer. Shariram rathamevatu. Sharira is the chariot. The body is being driven by this charioteer, who is the Atmanam. Buddhim tu sarathim vidhi mana pragraham evacha. Buddhi is Buddhi is the charioteer. Atma is the jiva who is running this body. There's the difference between the charioteer and the owner of the owner might be a slightly better word that what I was using. So we who are the owners, we are in that chariot. The chariot is the body, and the intellect is there is a not a one-to-one mapping between this shloka and what is happening in Bhagwad Gita, but we can still understand where it's coming from. Buddhim to sartham vidhi mana pragramaevacha. Mind is the reins. So the chariot is driven, and the buddhi is holding the reins of the horses, and the belt, that goes through the horse's nose, through which you control the horses. That is being said is mana here. And it says, Indriyani hayanahura vishanste gocharan. So it says that these horses are the different senses, the eyes, the nose, ears. Those are the horses. And they go and graze, whatever they can see, they go and graze on it. So it is the job of the charioteer with the reins to control this horse. If you don't control the horse, they'll go and take the chariot wherever, and they'll put it in a ditch, whatnot. So what it says is that if he who takes good control of this chariot is a good charioteer. We don't want to go through all of the details of this. And then he who doesn't control his horses, who doesn't use his reins well, and let the horses do whatever they want, and let them, breed chaos in the way it's managed, this whole chariot, that guy is not a good charioteer. That is what these 3 verses are over here from the Kathoupnishad. But you can see the ideas that have been taken from here and used in the Bhagwad Gita. Atmanam rathiram vidhi shariram rathamayatu buddhim tu sarathim vidhi mana pragrahamevacha indriyani hayanahura vishansteshu gocharan atma indra mano. So you, with all these guys, the atma indra mano yuktam bhoktetyahura manishinaha. So with the right control, the charioteer, the chariot, the horses, if everything is in control, then things are good. So it says, Yasta vijnanavan bhautyuktena manasa sada tasya indriyani vashyani. So this is like the typical Sanskrit sandhi, the way they join words. So it says tasya indriyani avashyani. You can't see the here because that's been joined here. Vash is to keep in control. Avashya is you don't keep it in control. So if you don't keep it in control, Dushtashva, this is not a good charioteer. That is what it's saying. Yasta vijnanavana bhavati yuktena manasa sada tasya indriyani vashyani dushtashrava sarthe. And then the next mantra, it says that if it is in control, this guy is a good charioteer. Yasta vijnanavana bhavati yuktena manasa sada tasya indriyani vashyani. Here it is says avashyani. So, you cannot see that over here. And here it says vashyani. Anyhow, that's not why we are referring to the Kathoupnishad. The reason we are referring is just for this verse you are here. Atmanam rathinam vidhi shariram rathamevatu. So they have given what this chariot that Arjun, that Sri Krishna is driving and Arjuna is sitting in it. What does that represent, or where do these ideas come from? One of the places is from the Kathoupnishad. Okay, so let me go back to where we were here. That's why this 14th slok, I wanted to spend some time on this, just to let you know that this also is derived from one of our main Upanishads. There are many Upanishads, but there are 10 main. One of the reasons they are called main is because Shankaracharya has written commentaries on it, and they form some of the foundations of the Advaita philosophy. It's a topic for another day. So back to our verse here. Tata Shvetair Hayair Yukte Mahatis Chandane Sthito Madhava Pandavas Chaiva Divyao Shankau Pradat Madhu. So now the Pandava, it is the Pandavas' turn. So the Pandavas now, Arjun and Sri Krishna in their chariot, they will blow the conch. Let's move to the next verse. So like I mentioned, now there is a whole list of other names that we are going to come across, and we'll go through them. But you need to, by now you must have got an idea of what is being said over here. It's painting this whole picture of the battlefield, which now with our idea of the symbolism that is there, you can see the other side of this picture. It's painting this different anatomy that is there. And so we will see these different characters, and you should be able to appreciate now these characters. Panchajanyam Rishikesha Devadattam Dhananjaya Poundram Dadmo Mahashankam Bhimakarma Vrukodaraha. So there are different names of conch shells over here. Panchajanyam Rishikesha. Panchajanya. This is the name of the conch shell that Rishikesha, which is another name for Krishna. So Krishna blew his conch shell. So what is Rishikesha? Again, this is, you will find many such words in Sanskrit where you take 2, 3, 4 words, you join them together, and then the place where they join, which is called the sandhi, they kind of form a different word. The way you pronounce it is different. So here Rishika and Isha are joined. So this is the Rishika. Isha is Lord of the senses. Isha is Lord. Rishika is the senses. So you can see that there is a correlation between this and the example that we, not example per se, but the mantra that we saw in the Kathoupnishad. You can see some relation there. So Panchajanyam Rishikesha Devadattam Dhananjaya. Devadatta is the name of the conch shell that Dhananjaya, which is the name for Arjun. So Shri Krishna blows his conch shell. Arjuna blows his conch shell. Poundram Dadmau Mahashankam Bhimakarma Vrukodaraha. Now here, this word here, Vrukodara. So what it is saying is that Krishna blew his conch shell, Arjuna blew his, and then Bhima, this is Bhima. Poundram Dadmo. So Poundram is the name of the conch shell that Bhima blew, and he is said to have the stomach of a wolf is one of the meanings. I'm not exactly sure if that's what is meant here. I think there's something else that is meant here, but not much has been analyzed on this. At least I have not come across. So Vrukodara is, Bhima is very powerful, and so he's well built. That's kind of one of the we can take that as one of the indications that is describing Bhima. So Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima, they blew their conch shells. What does this mean? This means that this argument that is happening in our mind, right? We are still there. We will be there for a long time to figure out what is here. This the intellect has put some topic, something is going on, the discussion is going on. There is interaction between the different forces in the mind, and there is tumult that is there that started off because Bhishmacharya blew his conch. And if we are on the right track, if we have done enough practice in our life, sometimes we have got enough experience in life that you don't get bogged down. If somebody says something, you are in the middle of an argument, and if you don't have don't have that kind of temperament, you just you go at the short end, and you will maybe not talk to him, go away. You'll take some drastic action. But if you are matured enough, you will absorb it, you'll try to think about it. So basically, you're addressing this cloud of dust that has suddenly blown, You are saying, trying to see, can I make some sense out of this? That is what when Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima, they are trying to understand the situation that you are being thrown in. So that's what is happening here. And we are almost out of time. Maybe I'll take the next verse, because now most of the verses are going to be like that. These are, if you will, the positive side of things. So these are the forces that come to our aid when we have been thrown into this situation. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha. You should be able to make out some of these things by now. Kunti Putra is the son of Kunti. Yudhishthira is obviously the Kunti's son Yudhishthir. He is blowing his conch shell, and that name is Ananta Vijaya. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha. And then who is left from the Pandavas? Nakul and Sahadev. So now they are going to blow their conch shells. Nakula Sahadevascha Sughosha Manipushpakao. So now the 5 Pandavas, they are announcing their arrival into this battlefield. Already Bhishma and all the other guys, they have shown their might. So these are the players on this other side, and now we are showing our might. So what is this? It is like the doctor has told you that don't eat sweet, and gulab jam or something is your favorite, and one small piece of it, not even the big, not even one ball, right? One small piece. Somebody is giving you in a spoon, just for taste, whatever. And all these guys now in your brain, in your mind, these are clamoring now. So one guy saying, don't do it. And then this other guy is like, doesn't matter, it's just a small piece. What happens? Just once I'll do it. So now all these conch shells are blowing in your mind. Bhishma is there, and Duryodhana is there, and Krishna and Arjuna, they are blowing. Who knows who will win? Depends what kind of a person you are, but we'll know what will happen. So it is very interesting. The Bhagwad Gita unfolds this situation. Well, we are already over time here. So I think we finished this verse here. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevasya Sughosha Mani Nakula Sahadevascha Sughosha Mani Pushpakao. So this is another Sanskrit thing. It is cha is and. Okay. We are going to stop at this point, and then we'll continue with verse 17 when we meet next time. Thanks for listening to this session, and we will continue next time. Bye.